Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And I think that we might have resolved our comments problem. I'm hoping. We'll see. But before today's topic is change. And before we get started, let's just take a minute to settle in and get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose. Hold it and imagine all that wonderful oxygen coursing into your lungs and moving out throughout your bloodstream, enlivening every cell of your body. And now exhale and relax and release any tension. And let's take another deep breath in through your nose. Hold it and imagine bright, sparkling white light coursing through and beyond every molecule in your body to connect you with this vast and teeming universe. And now let's just gently press our palms together, softly rub your fingers against your palms. Feel the tickling in your fingers, feel the tickling in your palms, and allow yourselves to just be present to the beauty and wonder of being physical right here, right now. Welcome. So it may have been a false alarm. It looks like we're still having comments issues. But in any case, let's talk about change. So I'm going to see if I can bring this up, if I have any better luck bringing it up on my phone so that I can see what you guys are saying. And I was listening to I think it's the second to last day of the course by Charles Eisenstein on one commune that you might want to check out. It's pretty cool. And he was talking about change and reminded me of the morphic field. And this is morphic resonance is a term that was, I have an ant climbing on my finger. This is crazy. A term coined by oh my gosh, all of a sudden it went out of my head. I'm so sorry. Anyway, Rupert Sheldrake, morphic resonance. And the notion of morphic resonance is the same as what you may have heard of as the 100th monkey idea. It's all part of the same imagining that when we reach a certain density of or a certain magnitude of thought or behavior, that it automatically will populate out beyond. And in this concept that Charles was talking about in the video I was watching this morning, it is a free course, and you still have like a day or two to catch it if you want. What he was talking about was the way that we can implement change by making the smallest choices from day to day. And what that looks like, for instance, is choosing kindness, or instead of reacting with anger, choosing to draw closer, to inquire, to connect. The choices for love, the choices for generosity that we make are contributing to this vast field that connects us all. And I've spoken about this idea previously with the work of Nassim Haramein, who is a unified physicist, producing a unified theory of all things, which is pretty exciting. And in his work, what he's talking about is that everything is part of a whole. And it's wonderful to know that science is finally proving what so many of us have already known. I want to just say good morning and thank you all for being here. I wish I could. I thought I had solved the comments problem, but unfortunately I'm unable to see what you're posting as you're posting it. So I promise I will get back to you, and I hope that you'll engage anyway, and that we can go back and forth through comments afterwards. But anyway, this notion of separateness versus unity, and when we look at the new science, what we see is that it's all one thing, that every movement, everything that looks like it's separate is really all part of one thing together. And so when we make a choice for love, and when we make a choice for peace, and when we express our higher nature, what that's doing is it is impacting this field that connects us all. And thereby, with the simplest, smallest things, we have the capacity, and we do by default, impact the overall field. And the field then is resonating at a new level that's impacting everybody that is partaking in it. And as we continue to elevate ourselves, oh my gosh, I do see a comment. This is so exciting. Hi, Dido. Oh my gosh, this is wonderful. So we did resolve the comment issue. That's beautiful. I'm thrilled to see that. So we're talking about change, and how some of us may choose to be engaged actively on the world stage, making a big splash in and galvanizing people to take action and beyond. Dido says, "Wow, yes, we got the comments back. I'm so thrilled. This made my day." Anyway, and I wanna thank Kim Colsey Venter, I think, is her last name, for her tireless efforts to help me get things straightened out. So if you are one of the people, apparently I'm not the only one that's had challenges with comments showing up during live Facebook broadcasts. One of the ways, or the way that I had a workaround, is to go into the producer. I think it's called Studio or Content Studio. Anyway, to go from there into Facebook Live rather than from the page directly. So anyway, that's a workaround for you. And back to the field. So now this change that I was able to bring about hopefully can support you in creating the change that you want to initiate. Hey, Dominic. Wow, how wonderful to have you here this morning. And Kim, good morning. I want to thank you. You're my hero, because you're the one that got us back into being able to see comments. So thank you for your diligence and commitment and support. Anyway, we're talking about change and the morphic field, and how the simplest choices that we make to elevate ourselves and our communications with others impacts the field and elevates the field. So when we make a choice for kindness, kindness propagates throughout the field. When we make a choice for love, love propagates throughout the field. And that gives us the elevation and momentum to increase that change. And I think it's really interesting, looking back over time, to see a massive transformation, for instance, in the whole notion of vegetarianism. When I was 15, I decided to become vegetarian. I think it was 15. It might even have been younger, because I hatched some chickens for a science fair, and they became my buddies. And one time we were sitting at the dinner table, and everybody was spitting bones, and I was horrified because it was like my friends, and I felt like I was being a cannibal. And so at that moment, I stopped eating meat, and I periodically, a couple times since then, went back to eating poultry or eating fish, and you know, it's been a back and forth. But at that time, it was a long time ago, when I went vegetarian for the first time. The notion of vegetarian food was a head of iceberg lettuce with ranch dressing on it, and gray string beans from a can. And there wasn't much in the way of vegetarian fare. And it was pretty it was pretty radical back then to be a vegetarian. And now it's so mainstream that we have fast food organizations that have vegetarian offerings that are actually nutritional or nutritious. And it's really quite remarkable, because vegetarianism or eating more plant based foods is something that is much, much more mainstream. And how did that change occur? It didn't occur through force. And that was the primary discussion around change in the talk that I was listening to this morning from Charles Eisenstein on the One Commune platform. It's a free course, so you can check it out if you want. But it's pretty interesting, because it's talking about how do we bring about political change, what is going on in the paradigms of our culture that we have the capacity to shift, and how do those shifts occur. And the interesting point that he made was that force in the context of change breeds resistance. And he was citing some interesting, I guess, I don't know if he wasn't citing specific studies, but he was talking about studies that had been done with people about shifting beliefs. And interestingly, we like to imagine ourselves as rational beings, where we make our decisions and we cultivate our beliefs based on reason and evidence. And in fact, it's not the case. In fact, when confronted by opposing evidence, oftentimes what happens is we resist and we retrench and dig in with our beliefs, and they become more deeply embedded rather than shifted and moved for most of us. And I have a great example of that still to this day cracks me up. My dad was a veterinarian, and he passed a couple years ago, and he was a very, very dynamic and dogmatic person. And he had very strong beliefs in the way the world worked. And I learned to do muscle testing, kinesiology, where I could actually ask your body questions. And in fact, that's what my coaching program is based on, or how I operate in the context of my coaching program, is doing muscle testing to see where we go, where we're oriented, etc., and to establish priorities. And so I demonstrated muscle testing to my dad. I took his arms and I asked him yes and no questions, and his arms stayed strong on a yes, and his arms would move when I pulled on them with a no. And he literally pulled his arms away from me, and he said, "You can't tell me that you're talking to my body and getting answers from my body." And I said, "Dad, you just saw it." And he said, "No, you can't tell me that happened, that that's for real." And I said, "So you would rather stick to your beliefs that this is not possible, despite the fact that you just now had an experience that completely contradicts that, because it's too much of a threat to your worldview and your beliefs?" And he said, "Yep." And that was the that was the end of that. And it was fascinating to me because he was such a bright man and considered himself a scientist, but this whole notion of being able to communicate with the body was so outside his realm of belief that he could not expand into it. So, um, experience and rational argument does not alter beliefs, and I've seen this in conversations with people about politics and different politicians from when you're on different sides to it seems that fact and logic does not impact belief. And Dido, thank you so much for posting the link to Political Hope, and that's with Charles Eisenstein. It's the course, and like I said, I think there are 2 more days. It's pretty interesting. Lots of ideas that we've spoken about in terms of oneness and separation and shifting paradigms and how we can be evolving into our next expression as human beings on this planet, and what our evolution is uh, how our evolution is unfolding. So we're going back to this idea of change and recognizing that as far as beliefs and such, it's not that force is going to change beliefs, right? Because we can't logically convince people that their beliefs are wrong. Uh, we can't necessarily force people to believe differently. And so, how do beliefs change? Well, oftentimes beliefs change from an internal personal revelation and experience. So, for instance, one of the things that was discussed in Charles's talk is when we connect with one another as human beings, the polarity between sides shifts when we can recognize and connect to our common humanity. Then there, like for instance, maybe we have beliefs about people on the other side of a political issue from us, and we might think that they're ignorant, or we might think that they're bad in some way, beyond being wrong, that they're bad. I actually had met somebody a while ago who told me that he couldn't have friends who were Trump supporters because they were just purely evil. And that kind of notion and that kind of uh, separation, um, it's actually dehumanizing. It's dehumanizing other people, and when we dehumanize one another, when we find ourselves separate from one another, that's where we create uh, deeper and deeper rifts. And so when we're trying to use force, who's going to win? The people that have the most force. So whether it be weapons or power or money, if we make our our quest to create change one of opposition, then what we create is opposition. And so when we move from a place of connection, there is a much greater opportunity for us to move arm in arm into the future, connected, and to be able to find solutions that are amicable and workable for everyone when we allow ourselves to truly hear each other. So here's another example about transformative change, and how the assumption of a solution that works for all and based in mutual respect can evolve. So I think I've mentioned this group that of people that I know who are in the process of forming a conscious community or conscious community in Mexico. And it was really interesting because what came up was initially their notion was to be able to create a paradise. And in this paradise, part of it for the people that were founding it was to be able to raise animals for meat and know that they had wonderful lives and that they were well cared for and that they were slaughtered humanely and with care and respect and beyond. And there are a bunch of people who are vegetarians or vegans that are also interested in participating in this community. And so it was really interesting to see that for the vegetarians and vegans, it's not okay to be raising animals for slaughter in the community. And so the question is, how can it be possible to bridge these two very passionate camps of concern? And it's not yet completely resolved, but one of the things that came up as a possible solution was to create a legal separation between the organization or the co-op, whatever, that would be raising animals for slaughter and for meat, and to keep that separate from the rest of the community, so that the people that are in the community can choose to eat meat, but they can't raise animals for slaughter on that property. And so that's one solution that arose. I don't know what the upshot is going to be, but it's really interesting when you have people of radically divergent ideologies. How do you bridge that gap? And it's possible when we rise to a higher value. And what I mean by that is to say, how do we bridge in this vegetarian, non-vegetarian, or vegetarian and meat-eating conversation? How do we find a solution that serves everyone? And the one way that this could have occurred is by people being adamantly factionalized and villainizing the people on the other side. But instead, in this case, we rose to a higher value, which was to find a solution that is respectful of everyone and that works for everyone, and to work with the assumption that we could do that it is possible to find a workable solution to things together out of in a group of respectful, caring humans. So back to the idea of change. Experience creates change. Experience of one another's humanity can shift our perception of other people and of another group. And we can also affect change by changing ourselves. So what we've heard over and over again is change, be the change you want to see in the world. And this notion of the resonant field, and this notion of the resonant field enables us to recognize that as we awaken more, as we put ourselves on the path of choices that are in the direction of love and kindness, that we are impacting the field, that we don't necessarily have to be out marching. We don't necessarily have to be making a big splash in the world. That's all really powerfully valuable as well. And it's the moment to moment, day to day choices that we can propagate out into our worlds that will make an impact and that do raise the frequency and that will take us to that 100th monkey place where the resonance just finally propagates through across the planet. And I think that there are many indications that we're seeing that. We're becoming much more aware of the unseen problems and the unseen truths, as Charles referred to them in his lecture, and the unseen truths, for instance, of sexual abuse that we have been confronting culturally, and of racial bias and violence that we have been faced with, like that we can no longer ignore. And as these things become part of our awareness, we get to choose a response to them that elevates all of us together. And so some people will choose to be meditating on a mountain, and some people will choose to be making political speeches or running for office or doing any number of other activist oriented activities. And the thing that we all can benefit from is that whatever those activities are, that they move from a place of love and kindness and inspiration and connection rather than divisiveness and separation and opposition. So bringing about change can be something where we nurture it into existence rather than trying to force it, because the force in and of itself creates resistance. So that's it for today. I am so excited to have comments back. I wish more of you had commented this morning, but it's great to be here with you. I so appreciate you and your attention, and I have lots of love and compassion for you, and tremendous gratitude. So I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. I'm here every weekday morning on Enlightened World Network at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. I hope you'll join me again. And in the meantime, check out all the other wonderful programming on Enlightened World Network. And hope to see you tomorrow. Lots of love.